if we have to consider the relationship between the idea of empire, of ancient empires, and the idea of, in this sense, autonomy, independence, we have to consider that the origin of Western society, or better, the origins of Western culture, of the ancient Western culture, that in any case influenced also the after tradition, it is in relation with the idea of this type of opposition. The idea of empires, in particular, that it was developed from the Persian Empire in relation with the idea of Western society, in this sense, for example, in the ancient Greek city-state, in front of the ancient Greek city-state, and the idea of independence. In fact, the idea of Hellenism, it was really interesting in relation with the Western culture, but how happened this type of culture of Hellenistic society? And in this sense, that was founded from Alexander the Great, and after his death, with the division of his empire in different type of kingdoms. We have to consider the main opposition. The main opposition that it was developed by the empires, in particular from the ancient Persian empires, the Hellenistic Empire, and then also the Roman Empire, the type of characters of these empires in relation with the autonomy and independence of a city-state. In fact, if we have to consider why the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, considered, in this sense, a problem when there was a specific type of Hellenistic empire, why the tradition of the philosophy of the ancient Greeks changed, in particular, develop a specific type of private philosophy in the end of the classical period with Alexander the Great and after Alexander the Great. Because the Greek city-state and the Greek philosophers, but in particular also the Greek citizens, consider, and the Greek that lived in the city-states, consider really important their independence, and therefore the other city-state, in relation with the city-state where citizens lived, it was other thing. It was another thing. The idea of friendship, the idea of citizenship, the idea of true and false, the idea of just and unjust, the idea of justice, the idea of freedom. It was only relationship with the idea of the specific type of a city-state where a citizens lived. But this type of meaning had a specific type, in the sense of meaning, only in that city-state, not in the other. The city-state for the citizens A of the citizens, the city-state of the citizens A that lived in that city-state had a specific type of meaning for him, and it was a relationship between them. But the other city-state didn't have this type of relationship. With the imperialism, that it was also developed during the Persians that tried to conquer the Greeks in 5th century BC and failed. This type of imperialism tried to develop a specific type of multicultural development. Tried to develop a specific type of a multicultural environment. And according to the ideology of the ancient Greeks, this type of multicultural environment, it was a problem, because in our world that it is multicultural, that there is a multicultural environment, therefore, according to the ideology of the ancient Greeks, we cannot understand what is the friendship, what is the politics, what is the just and unjust. And if we have to consider, for example, philosophy of Aristotle, we have to think about this. In fact, according to Aristotle, the main culture, it was Greek, but not because the other, we have to change technically the other, but because we would like to stay in our independence. Therefore, according to the ancient Greek philosophy, ancient Greek city-state, the idea of independence, according to the ideology of ancient Greeks, it was the main culture of the Greeks, that it was much more important than the others, but the Greeks wanted to stay independent in front of the others, to maintain, according to their ideology, the exchanges, they exchanges about thoughts, the ideas about thoughts, and stay in this idea in relation with their culture. What happened next? On the one hand, when the Persian Empire tried to conquer Greeks considered this empire a problem. On the one hand, because multicultural. On the other hand, in particular, because the Persian Empire wanted to dominate the city-states. But in fact, the city-states didn't want the multicultural idea. The citizens of a city-state were in relation with the meaning of the citizens of a city state. And this meaning, it was the main thing to follow on the one hand. On the other hand, why, for example, with the Hellenistic period that was born, happened with Alexander the Great, the Greek city-state arrived in a crisis, in a period of crisis, finished in a period of crisis. Because in this sense, we know that Alexander the Great, indirectly, before his conquest, tried to connect the Macedonian Greek, the Greek Macedonian thought and people and culture with the others, exported the culture of the Greek outside the city states, the Greek city states, but at the same time connected the populations of the Greeks that technically they were divided on the one hand, and connected the Greeks with the Persians, therefore, according to the Greek people, the barbarians, with them, because a lot of people followed Alexander on the one hand, and then the new hegemony, it was the hegemony of Macedon on the Greeks. Therefore, the idea of structure of a city-state lost his character, lost his main identity on the one hand. And on the other hand, a lot of people that followed Alexander connect themselves to other people, produce new type of sons that, according to the city-states, according to the Greek thought and the Greek specifically ideology, these sons couldn't be specifically Greeks because they were sons of, on the one hand, for example, a woman that was Persian, and on the other hand, a man that was Greek. Therefore, who is this type of son? The same Alexander the Great had married a woman, a princess of Bactria, of the Persian Empire. This is really interesting because Greeks, therefore, try to think, this is a problem because this type of connections couldn't develop according to that ideology of the Greek city-states, a specific type of connection of culture with these people, and according to the idea of the ancient Greek man, there couldn't be a specific type of debate and a culture connection with these cultures that indirectly Alexander the Great developed. In fact, it is not a case that the main type of origin, the cause of the origins of a Western society, it was this type of imperialism that indirectly produced multiculturalism from the idea of a Persian Empire that it was already multicultural. Alexander the Great tried to think about this type of multiculture and directly produced that multiculture, exported the Greek of the culture of Macedon and Greeks and Greece outside these realities to the Persian empires, to the Egypt, to Africa, to India, and connected to Asia Minor, and connected these to Syria, and connect all these cultures with other people, not necessarily Greeks, other people that were born in Syria, in Egypt, etc., that began to study Aristotle, Plato, etc. On the other hand, the Greeks that didn't follow this type of cultures, because the Greeks consider only a relation with their ideologies, the idea of I am Greeks and I would like to stay in my city-states. I don't want that there are other people that are in connection with my culture, in relation with this type of globalized world. And in this sense, according to the Greeks, the idea of imperialism that wanted to maintain on them its empire and exported this, developed a new world that the Greeks didn't consider as a great world. Because the Greek city-state, in relation with its politics, it was only to maintain a specific type of politics in relation with its type of citizenship, not with other type of structure with other cultures. And this is the main type of structure, development that we can consider. Cioè, in other words, the opposition, the idea of city-state, that developed the idea of independence, that influenced so importantly the Western world on the one hand. In fact, for example, in the Middle Ages, the idea of independence, the idea of city-states maintain its influence also in the idea of federalism in the United States, etc., passing with Switzerland in the Middle Ages, for example. But on the other hand, and the idea of philosophy that maintain its type of important with this type of independent idea. But on the other hand, the idea of imperialism that would like to maintain its power, its force, uh, its objective. The idea of imperialism that wanted to maintain its objective with a multicultural empire, therefore a lot of cultures that develop between themselves. In fact, it wasn't a problem for the Persian when arrived Alexander because the Persian were a multicultural empire. But the Greeks, they wasn't, according to their ideology. But this type of opposition, it is really important because on the one hand, the influence that the Greek states arrived because the Greeks didn't want to consider the other, didn't want that the other influence them. But on the other hand, the idea of multicultural that develop a specific type of connection with different type of cultures to maintain an empire. In fact, what the Romans did, Rome with this empire, in particular after and during the Punic Wars, develop a specific type of multicultural empire with a different type of cultures: Iberia, Spain, North Africa, Italy, France. We know Julius Caesar that in the end, when after the Punic Wars, in the end, in the 4th century BC, Julius Caesar conquered the Gallia, in the Africa. Then Rome arrived also in Britain. Rome developed his type of conquest also in Palestine, in Asia Minor, in Greece, and founded different type of cultures into them. Development then the idea of citizens as not more, no less, not only now in that idea of we have only the citizens who are part of the Italian peninsula. But, for example, with the Costituzione Antoniniana of Caracalla, the citizens are potentially who is part of empire. And the empire is really, really big, multicultural in this sense. And the idea of multiculturalism arrived also to them in relation with this. But this type of opposition, what is the role of independence of a culture that Greeks develop against the idea of multiculturalism and against the idea of imposition of the other culture? And what is the main idea and what is the main importance of a multicultural society? According to the Greeks, in this sense, the Greeks didn't consider the possibility to develop a philosophy in a multicultural society. In fact, the Hellenistic society of the city-states became the philosophy of the private life because, according to Epicurus, for example, or according in general to the ancient Greek philosophers in general, how can I do philosophy if I have to consider other cultures that are not part of me, according to that ideology? Therefore, this is not politics if I have to develop a politics with others that I don't consider the same of me. According to Plato or Aristotle, the only thing to maintain politics is to maintain politics in relation with only the citizens of that city-state. Much more Plato, develop a specific type of confederation, but only between Greeks. The idea of multicultural society arrived to develop and change this fact technically with the idea of expansion of the world, the globalization, but indirectly the idea that it was developed from the idea of a connection with the city-state indirectly. And the main opposition, autonomy of the city-state, independence of the city-state, and the idea of globalization, multiculture, and connection between cultures founded on the idea of the imperialism to maintain the force of empire and its power in this sense. Because an empire that would like to maintain a big land, a big territory, had to consider that in this territory there are a lot of cultures, different cultures, not the same cultures. Therefore, the idea of tolerance, the idea of connection between cultures, the idea of citizenship, the idea of law, different type of situations from the Greek city-state that in any case maintain his particular thing of idea of independence that continue to explain his reason of independence. This is the main debate that happened from the ancient world, from the idea of independence and the idea of multicultural society that is connect in itself. Because from the idea of independence derive a philosophy, but at the same time, the idea of multicultural society exported this philosophy and produced science in the Western society. Bye.